Have you ever heard a sound so haunting, it felt like it was meant only for you? What if a single bell toll could decide your fate? Not in heaven, but somewhere far, far worse. There's a place buried deep in the forgotten woods of Halcroft, where moss clings to stone and the air never feels quite right. Locals say an ancient church once stood there. The church is long gone, but the bell remains, rusted, cold, and cracked with time. And it only rings when someone is doomed to die. Not just any death, not peaceful, not natural. Cursed. Terror doesn't age. Neither does the bell. And it has rung through bloodlines. 7 generations of horror, each more twisted than the last. This is the story of the forgotten church bell. It rings for those who are doomed. 7 generations, 7 blood-soaked legacies, and 1 cursed bell, waiting to toll again. But the real question is, if you heard the bell ring, would you run or would you accept your fate? Comment below. What would you do if you heard a bell ringing and no one else could? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this nightmare with a friend who dares to listen. Because once you hear the bell, there's no turning back. Halcroft, 1841. The storm rolled in thick and early over the crooked hills of Halcroft, choking out the moonlight with clouds blacker than pitch. Thunder clawed the sky. Somewhere in the distance, somewhere no map marked anymore, the bell rang. Once, the villagers froze, all of them. Mothers clutching their children, farmers dropping tools mid-harvest, even the town drunk sobered instantly. Eyes turned eastward, toward the ancient wood. No one spoke, not even a whisper. They all knew what it meant. Samuel Rook, the gravedigger, was the first to break the silence. With soil still caked under his fingernails and his boots soaked from the day's burial, he limped through the churchyard. His breath was short, not from exertion, but fear. He'd heard tales of the bell as a boy, but it hadn't rung in over 60 years. They said it rang only when the bloodline was ready to pay again. Samuel's mother had warned him before she died. If you ever hear that bell, Sam, don't look back. Don't wait. Leave. Run. Because it don't toll for the living. It tolls for the next. But Samuel didn't run. He went home slowly, with a candle shaking in his hand, and a prayer he hadn't said since he was 12. His house sat at the edge of the village nearest the woods, where the earth dipped into a forgotten clearing, where the bell tower used to stand. He didn't sleep that night, and by morning the crows came. Thousands of them, screeching, swarming, blackening the sky like a plague. They circled Samuel's roof, crashing into windows, scratching at the chimney. By sundown, the crows were gone. So was Samuel. Only his boots were found, still warm, still laced, standing perfectly upright in the middle of his bed. Blood smeared the sheets, but not a single drop on the floor. No sign of struggle, no body, no noise, just silence. And then, 2 nights later, it rang again. Once. That's when Father Gideon knew. He had heard the stories whispered through generations, buried in the sermons the elders dared not read aloud. The church had been burned down long before he was born, after the last family fell. A family cursed for building the bell in the first place. He found the journal hidden behind a brick in the rectory wall, its leather cover brittle with time. Inside, scrawled in black ink and madness, were the words, "It rings for the marked. One for each generation, until the line is ended, until the blood debt is paid in full." Samuel wasn't just any man. He was the last of the Rooks, a family rumored to be tied to the bell's origin. One by one, his ancestors had vanished. Now it started again. Father Gideon went to the old clearing that night, guided only by oil lamp and memory. The trees there twisted like dying limbs, bark warped by fire, long forgotten. At the heart of the clearing stood a rusted iron frame, arched like a spine, and dangling from it by a single chain was the bell. It shouldn't be there. The bell tower had been destroyed generations ago. No one had rebuilt it. But there it was, silent, immense, the size of a man's torso, and blackened with rust and something darker. He stepped closer. The grass around the bell was dead. The air, too still. No sound of wind, no birds, no insects. Even his breath came out soundless. Then he saw it, a name carved into the side of the bell. Gideon. His candle sputtered out. He ran. He didn't stop until he reached the church, bolting the door behind him. His hands trembled as he tried to pray, but the words tasted like ash. That night, he burned the journal. But the curse doesn't burn. That same evening, his reflection stopped mimicking him. In the rectory mirror, it stood still while he moved. It blinked when he didn't. And once, only once, it smiled. Gideon locked every mirror in the church in the cellar and nailed the door shut. Yet the next morning, a mirror appeared beside his bed, cracked, dirty, with a single message scrawled in the dust. You are the next. He smashed it, but the glass embedded itself into his hands. The shards refused to be pulled. His flesh healed around them. For the next week, the bell rang every night. Once, always at 3:13 a.m. Always distant, yet close enough to hear as if it whispered in your ear. The townspeople began to see things, shadowed figures in doorways, eyes peering through curtains, laughter in empty rooms. Children screamed in their sleep, their mouths sewn shut by nightmares. A traveling bishop was called in from Kingsdale to cleanse the land. He lasted 2 days before he was found swinging from the church rafters with his eyes gouged out, a smile carved from ear to ear. No one dared enter the church again, except Gideon. On the seventh night, he walked barefoot into the clearing, candle in one hand, holy book in the other. His robes were torn, his skin pale. He looked like he hadn't slept in a year. He knelt before the bell. The chain moved. The bell swung once, and it rang. Gideon's scream was never heard. Only silence followed. By dawn, the bell was gone. In its place, a cradle, empty except for a blood-soaked cloth and a note that read, "The bloodline continues." Halcroft, 1886. 45 years had passed since the last known toll of the bell. Halcroft had changed faces, but its bones remained the same. Silent streets, thick mists clinging to rooftops, and that ever-present sense that the woods were watching. No one spoke of the Rooks or Father Gideon anymore. Time had done its best to bury the past, but time doesn't forget what the bell remembers. Ellis Greaves was a man of logic, a scholar from Eastmoor, recently married into the Decker family, the oldest remaining bloodline in Halcroft. They called themselves survivors, but the truth was no Decker had dared live near the woods for decades. The bell didn't care. Ellis and his wife, Clara, inherited the Decker estate, a crumbling manor 2 miles north of the village. Towering halls, shattered stained glass windows, and rooms still sealed shut with wax and prayers. It was a legacy Clara never wanted, but her father's final words had been clear. Keep the house. Protect the line. Never go near the bell. Clara didn't explain what he meant. Ellis didn't ask. For the first 3 months, life was quiet, until the night of the harvest moon, when Ellis heard the sound. It was faint, just a single chime, a metallic moan carried through the fog like a whisper in a dream. He jolted upright in bed, certain he'd imagined it, but Clara was already awake, pale, shivering, staring at the window. You heard it, didn't you? She whispered. He nodded. She didn't speak again for days. That morning, Ellis found a book in the attic, wrapped in linen, buried beneath floorboards. On its cover, a symbol of a bell drawn in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. Inside were records, names, sketches of the church that no longer stood, and details of every death linked to the tolling. At the bottom of the final page, he found his wife's name, Clara Decker Greaves, with a date scrawled beside it. October 13th, 1886. 3 days from now. He confronted her in the garden, hands trembling, voice barely controlled. You knew, he said. You knew this was coming. Clara didn't deny it. Her mother had died the same way. So had her brother. One by one, the Deckers fell when the bell called, and now it was Clara's turn. But we can stop it, Ellis insisted. There's logic to this. A cause, a source. We'll find the bell. Destroy it. Clara didn't answer. She just whispered, You can't kill something that feeds on fear. That night, Ellis didn't sleep. He searched every floor of the manor, every journal, every hidden drawer. In the oldest wing of the house, he found a mural painted behind peeling wallpaper, a scene of a child being handed to a faceless priest beneath a towering black bell. The child had no eyes, no mouth, just a hollow scream painted where a face should be. And then, the bell rang. Twice. He dropped the candle. The house went dark, and something began to move in the walls. Thumping, dragging, breathing. The servants fled the next morning, refusing to return. Clara wouldn't eat. She stood at the window all day, her eyes glassy, lips twitching as though she were speaking to someone who wasn't there. Ellis reached out to the village priest, Father Mallory, a portly man with trembling hands and a smile too wide. Mallory had grown up on horror stories, and he remembered what others pretended to forget. "The bell is old," he said. "Older than Halcroft. Older than sin, maybe. They say it's alive, made from something that was never meant to be unearthed." "Then how do we stop it?" Ellis demanded. Father Mallory's smile faltered. "You don't. You survive it, if it lets you." By nightfall, the bell rang again. 3 times, each chime louder than the last. The sound shook the walls, shattered a mirror, and something began scratching at the windows. Ellis armed himself with a revolver, holy water, and a lantern. He locked Clara in the bedroom and ventured into the woods. The deeper he went, the colder it became. Trees bent toward him. The wind hissed secrets. And somewhere ahead, between twisted roots and fog-drenched earth, he saw it, the bell. It didn't hang from any tower this time. It sat on the ground, half buried in soil, its chain slithering into the earth like a serpent. The metal was cracked, but it pulsed, like a heart, faintly glowing, humming. He raised the revolver and fired 3 times. The bell didn't flinch, but Ellis did, because the bell laughed. The sound wasn't external. It was in his head, inside his skull. A chorus of wails and mocking whispers that made his knees buckle. His vision blurred. Blood trickled from his ears. And then he heard Clara scream. He ran back, lungs tearing in his chest. When he reached the house, the door was ajar. The locks undone. The bedroom empty. Blood smeared across the floor in long, dragging streaks. In the middle of the hall stood a mirror. In it, Clara stood smiling, though she wasn't in the room. Behind her in the reflection was a tall figure in priest's robes, faceless, holding her hand. The mirror shattered. Ellis dropped to the floor. He screamed until his throat bled. The next morning, the villagers found him on the manor roof, carving Clara's name into the stone over and over until his fingers were bone. They never found her body, and the bell hasn't rung again. Not yet. Hal Croft, 1921. The old stories were buried beneath concrete and ambition. The village had grown into a small town now. Electric street lamps buzzed on every corner. Cars replaced horse carts, and radio static filled parlors every evening. People laughed louder in Halcroft as if louder voices could drown out the ghosts. But they never touched the woods. Children dared each other to run in, never more than 10 paces. No one built past the tree line. And every so often, someone would find a feather-black crow on their doorstep, eyes gouged out, beak full of blood. Diana Morwood had never believed in curses. She was a school teacher, educated in London, and had returned to Halcroft only after her mother's funeral. The family house had gone untouched for years, an ivy-covered brick structure that leaned westward as if whispering secrets to the woods nearby. She hadn't planned to stay, but there was something calling her. She felt it her first night back, a dream or memory of her grandfather screaming as the walls bled ink, of a bell tolling once in the distance. She awoke with dirt under her fingernails and a voice whispering in her ear. "You've come home." The villagers kept their distance. They knew the Morwood name. Diana's grandfather was rumored to be the last madman to survive the toll. He had disappeared into the woods in 1887, muttering about blood debts and mirrors that lie. Diana found his journal on the 3rd night, bound in human skin, or something that felt close to it, and tucked beneath the floorboards in the attic. The pages were brittle and written in 2 distinct handwritings. The first, scholarly, precise. His notes on the bell, its origin, its patterns. The second was madness. Scribbles, symbols, repeated phrases like, "It watches, it waits. She is the key, she is the lock." Her name, Diana, was scrawled across the final page. And then, as the wind howled against her window, the bell rang. Once, the sound came from nowhere and everywhere. Her ears popped. Her nose bled. All the lights in the house blew out simultaneously. The radio in the parlor turned on by itself, static erupting, followed by a voice she hadn't heard in 15 years. Diana! It was her mother's voice. Dead, buried, gone. She fled to the village, pounding on the Reverend's door. Reverend Ellis Thorne, a descendant of the same cursed Greaves line, let her in. He didn't speak, just handed her a small, rusted bell clapper wrapped in velvet. "What is this?" she whispered. "The tongue of the original bell," Thorne said, "removed in 1841 by a priest who tried to silence it. It still rings, even without the bell." "But how?" "There are things older than iron, older than time. The bell is only part of it. It feeds on bloodlines. It returns every few generations. You're next." She didn't sleep for 2 nights. On the third night, she saw her mother standing in the garden, pale, hollow, eyes black as the night, smiling. "Come with me, Di. It's so quiet there, so warm." Diana didn't move. The figure tilted its head, and then the bell rang again, twice. A mirror shattered in the hallway. The wallpaper peeled back in curling strips. Beneath it, in charcoal black letters, was a message. 3 tolls. Then the door opens. The next day she packed. She would leave Halcroft, never look back. But her car wouldn't start. The train station was closed. Roads were flooded, unnaturally, only around her property, and every mirror in her home reflected a different version of herself. In one, her skin peeled like bark. In another, her mouth was stitched shut. In the third, she was a child again, screaming, reaching toward a man with no face. That night, she took the clapper and returned to the woods. Fog curled at her ankles. Roots reached up like claws. She moved toward the heart of the forest where, deep beneath moss and rot, the ground opened into a sinkhole. The bell was there, different this time. It didn't hang or rest. It floated, suspended in air by nothing but shadows. Around it stood the others, figures barely human, transparent, twitching, mouths gaping open in silent screams. All of them people she recognized from her family tree. All of them marked. One by one they turned to her. A voice echoed, not from a mouth but from inside her. "Ring it, or they take your place." She refused. The bell rang anyway. 3 times. Reality cracked. The forest split, like pages torn from a book. Fire rained upward. Her body seized, bones bending the wrong way, eyes rolling back as the shadows leapt into her mouth. Then silence. She woke in her bed. Morning sun spilled through the window. Birds chirped. The bell was gone, but her reflection still smiled. She left Halcroft that day, sold the house to a stranger who never asked about the history, moved to the city, married, had a child, and 20 years later, on her daughter's 13th birthday, she heard it again. The bell, 1 toll, from inside the child's room. Bristol, 1944. During the war, the sirens wailed first, an air raid, a warning to seek shelter. But for Isla Greaves, it was the second sound that chilled her blood. A bell, not the shrill clanging of warning bells, not the local church's chime. No, this one was deep, unholy. It rang through her bones, not her ears, and she'd heard it once before. She was only a girl then, hiding beneath her mother's bed in Halcroft, the house shaking as glass shattered for no reason, her mother whispering prayers between sobs. That was the night her cousin vanished, leaving behind a mirror soaked with blood and her name scratched into the wall. Now Isla was 23, a nurse tending to wounded soldiers in a makeshift ward. She had rebuilt her life, fled the past, changed her name. No one even knew she was part of the Greaves line. She had scrubbed the horror from her mind like an infection. But the bell remembered. Outside, searchlights cut through smoke. The city trembled under bombardment. But in the hospital's east wing, something stirred that had nothing to do with war. A boy in room 12 screamed. a scream so blood-curdling it froze every nurse in their tracks. When Isla rushed in, he was sitting upright, pupils blown wide, pointing at the wall. "It came through the mirror," he whimpered. "What did?" she asked. "The priest," he said, and then his voice changed, became older, raspier, familiar. "You should have stayed in Halcroft, Isla." She reeled back, breath gone, heart slamming against her ribs. The boy convulsed. Then he collapsed. His pulse stopped, but no one else saw it happen. When she called for help, the others found nothing wrong. The boy, sedated from earlier injuries, lay asleep. No one else heard the bell. No one else saw the long, dark smear on the mirror's glass, the shape of a handprint, dragging down as if someone were trying to climb through from the other side. That night, the bell rang again. Twice. She vomited blood. Isla fled, left the hospital. The city was under lockdown, bombs dropping across the river, fires raging, but she ran through it all. Like the fire couldn't touch her, like the bell protected its chosen. She arrived at an abandoned church on the city's outskirts, the doors chained but broken. Inside, the floor was littered with soot and forgotten pews. And on the altar sat a mirror, not ancient, new, even polished. Carved into the base in unfamiliar script were words she instinctively understood. "You are the womb." She stumbled back, tripping over a body, one she hadn't seen entering. The face was burned, but the hands, they clutched a small, rusted bell clapper. She picked it up, and the air changed. Wind howled through the sealed doors. Candles she hadn't noticed lit by themselves. Whispers circled her head. Her skin crawled, vision dimmed. Then her reflection stepped out of the mirror. Same face, same eyes, but the mouth was sewn shut, skin pale as milk, and it held something in its hand. A bundle wrapped in cloth. A child, crying without sound. Isla fell to her knees. "No," she breathed. "That's not mine." The figure knelt beside her, placed the child in her arms. Its eyes opened. They were black, entirely, like twin voids, and its voice whispered into her mind. "You are the womb." The next gate, the cycle continues. She threw the child down, screaming, but it vanished midair, scattering into 1,000 crows that circled the ceiling and burst into shadow. The mirror shattered. When she awoke the next morning, she was back in her apartment. The city's silence was almost worse than the bombings, and she was pregnant. 3 months in. Doctors were baffled. No history, no partner, no signs. But the fetus was strong, moving, growing fast. She tried everything. Abortion clinics refused her. One even burned down mysteriously the night before her appointment. By the 6th month, she stopped seeing her own reflection. Every mirror showed the child instead. Always older, always watching. On her due date, she returned to Halcroft. She knew she would end there. They all did. The curse was never meant to be outrun. She gave birth alone in the ruins of the Decker estate, floorboards rotted, walls breathing with rot. The child came silently, no cries, no struggle. It opened its eyes and whispered, "We are the 4th." Then the bell rang, 3 times, and the house collapsed. The townsfolk found nothing the next day. No baby, no body, no trace she ever returned. But in the woods, where no one dared go, there was a new structure, a stone cradle, moss-covered and warm. Inside it, wrapped in blood-stained linen, a mirror, cracked, still showing Isla's face, still smiling. Halcroft, 1989. The world was louder now. Cassette tapes, televisions in every room, telephones buzzing through long wires like veins of the city. But in Halcroft, something older still pulsed beneath the surface, something no amount of white noise could drown out. They called her Morgan Hale, an orphan, raised by silence in foster homes, drawn back to Halcroft by a pull she couldn't explain. She was 25, an amateur photographer with a fascination for abandoned spaces, and she'd never heard the stories. But the bell remembered. Morgan's obsession led her to the outskirts of town, where rumors swirled about an old church that wasn't on any map. The locals gave vague directions, eyes never meeting hers. "It moves," one whispered. It's not always there, but it's always waiting. And wait it did. She found it near dusk, nestled deep between roots and overgrowth, like the forest itself tried to keep it hidden. The structure was unnatural, stone that wasn't quite stone, colors that seemed to bend wrong, and ivy that crawled in reverse. No birds sang here. The silence was too loud. Inside, it wasn't a church at all. No pews, no altar, just mirrors. Dozens, hundreds. Tall, wide, cracked, clean. They covered every wall, the ceiling, even the floor in parts. They didn't reflect the room. They reflected moments. In one, Morgan saw herself as a child, standing at the foot of a burning bed. In another, she was screaming, but no sound came out. One mirror showed her sleeping peacefully as a figure in priest robes watched from the corner. She lifted her camera. Click. Flash. All the mirrors went black. Then the bell rang. Once, and the door behind her vanished. She ran. Her shoes echoed in an impossible space. The mirrors now showed people she didn't know, screaming, begging, pointing at her. Then among them she saw Isla, gaunt, hollow-eyed, arms wrapped around a child with ink for eyes. Morgan turned and vomited. When she looked up again, one mirror had cleared. Her own face stared back. But this time her reflection was different. It moved on its own, smiled slowly, and behind it stood a cradle of stone. She backed away, straight into something warm and breathing. She turned. There was nothing there, but her camera was missing. The flash went off behind her. Once, twice, she ran. She didn't find the exit, but she found stairs. Winding, spiraling down, like descending the spine of a great beast. As she descended, the air grew heavier, thicker. Each breath tasted like rust and ash. Then she reached it, the bell. No longer floating, no longer hidden. It stood in the center of a room built from bone and black glass. Candles flickered, but there was no fire. Just the sound of breathing. Not hers. Around the bell were figures, 7 of them. Hooded, faceless, whispering in a language she didn't know, but felt inside her chest. It was pain, and hunger, and memory. One stepped forward and handed her a frame, a photo, the picture she'd taken, of herself before the first toll. But now the reflection in the mirror was holding the child, the same child from the other generation, the black-eyed thing. She dropped it. The bell rang again, twice. The room shifted. Suddenly, she was no longer in the church. She was in a hospital, a memory not hers. Nurses ran through corridors. Sirens blared. A child screamed. And standing at the end of the hallway, Isla. Morgan blinked. Then she was on a train platform, wind whipping her coat, announcements echoing in the background. But every person on the platform had no face. Then she stood in a burning forest. Then in a graveyard with mirrors instead of tombstones. Each time she turned, the bell was closer, until it was right behind her. She screamed and woke up. In her apartment, her camera was on the table. She developed the film, but every photo was of the bell. Every single one. She tried to throw the camera away. It reappeared on her nightstand the next morning. She moved out of Howcroft. A week later, she found her new apartment building had burned down overnight. She wasn't hurt. She hadn't even been there. She had gone back to the woods, unwillingly, unknowingly, sleepwalking. The forest called her now, every night, dreams, whispers, the clanging of the bell growing closer. Then the mirror in her bathroom cracked, and inside it, she saw herself. Pregnant. Impossible, she muttered. But the mark was real, a growing bulge. The tests were clear. She was one of them, one of the next. 3 days before the due date, she saw her own reflection climb out of the mirror, smile and whisper, "You are the 5th." The gate opens wider. Then the bell rang, 3 times, and Morgan vanished. Not a trace. But the camera was found, on the doorstep of an orphanage. Inside it was a single photo, a child, wrapped in linen, with black eyes. New York City, 2020 glass towers pierced the clouds. Neon lights flickered like artificial stars. The world had long forgotten Howcroft, buried beneath concrete, satellites, and hashtags. But darkness doesn't die with time. It only waits. And now it had found Elijah Vane. He was 28, a digital archivist obsessed with obscure history, forgotten folklore, and untraceable curses. His blog, Digital Dust, had gone viral more than once, thanks to deep dives into missing persons cases and secret government experiments. But one email changed everything. Subject, you're next. Body, do not look for the bell. It's already looking for you. Attached was a single photo. A black-eyed child, held in the arms of a woman with no face. Behind them stood a floating church bell suspended in darkness. Elijah stared at the image for hours, dissecting every pixel. It wasn't photoshopped. It wasn't fake. And buried in the metadata was GPS data. Coordinates. To Holcroft, he didn't believe in curses. Not until the mirror in his bedroom showed someone else's reflection. Not until he found scratches on his walls that read, 6 tolls, 6 keys. Not until his phone rang at 3:33 a.m. with the sound of a bell. Once. He went to Holcroft. It was a ghost town now. Overgrown, forgotten. Roads ended in vines. Nature had reclaimed it. But there were still signs, scorch marks, twisted iron fences, and windows that stared back like eyes. Elijah brought gear drones, thermal scanners, high-lumen flashlights. But nothing prepared him for what he found in the woods. A mirror, half buried in moss, taller than a man. Etched around its edge were ancient runes that pulsed when he approached. And from the mirror, fog poured out. He backed away. The bell rang. Twice. He dropped to his knees, screaming as blood leaked from his eyes. His ears filled with whispers, hundreds of voices layered on top of each other, all calling the same word: key, 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 key. He woke in a motel room 3 hours away. His camera was full of images he didn't take, black and white photographs of the same woman, Morgan Hale. And in every image, the bell drew closer behind her. In one photo, Morgan looked directly at the lens. Beneath it, in shaky handwriting, "He is the sixth." The lock groaned. Elijah's blog posts changed after that. Darker, paranoid. He stopped sleeping. Ate only salt and ash. He kept crucifixes around his apartment, which burned his hands when he touched them. He stopped seeing his own reflection. The final entry he posted was titled, "The Six Before Me." He detailed the bloodline, the pattern, the tolls: Decker, Greaves, Morwood, Hale, and himself, Vane, all tied by blood, all marked by the bell. He wrote, "The seventh is almost here. The door will open, but I will not ring it." He left the city the next morning, driving until his car died on the edge of a lake shaped like an eye. And there, beneath a broken sky, the church found him. It rose from the lake like a cathedral of bones, impossible angles, windows made of stretched skin, and the bell no longer suspended, but swinging slowly without sound. He stepped inside. No cameras, no weapons, just his name echoing through the walls in whispers. Elijah, Elijah, Elijah. 6 were filled with mirrors, each one showing the final moments of the generations before him. Screaming, bleeding, disappearing. The 7th mirror was blank. He approached it. His face appeared. Then the bell rang 3 times. The mirrors shattered. He felt something inside him shift, like a lock turning, a key grinding bone. He collapsed, mouth wide in a silent scream. A burning symbol appeared on his chest, a ring with 7 lines pointing inward. From the shadows came the child, the same one from the photos, older now, taller, hollow-eyed. It walked toward him, dragging a rusted clapper behind it, each step louder than the last. Then it spoke, not aloud, but into Elijah's mind. "You were the silence. The final key awakens." He asked, "Who is the 7th?" The child smiled. "She is already here." The bell tolled once more, and Elijah was gone. No trace, no body, no sound, only a photo posted to his dead blog. 6 days later, a black and white image of a woman, unknown, standing in the woods with the child in her arms, and the bell behind her cracked and bleeding light. Present day, 2025. Somewhere near Holcroft. The town was dust now, only broken stone teeth jutting from the earth where homes once stood. The wind didn't blow here. The air hung too thick, like breath held for too long. But she had returned. Celeste Rowan, a 22-year-old graduate student studying folklore and myth,
Didn't know why she came. She only knew she had to. It wasn't a whisper or dream or letter. It was a pull, an ache beneath the skin, something ancient tapping on the inside of her skull. Celeste had grown up in foster care, her birth family sealed under redacted files. She never asked questions. She was too afraid of the answers. The seventh, she didn't want it. But the bell didn't care what she wanted. The forest around Halcroft was a scar of charred roots and dying trees. At the heart of it lay a trail no one should see, a path paved with broken mirrors, each one reflecting not her face, but others. A woman bleeding in a tub, Esla. A man crawling through ash, Elijah. A child walking backward into fire. And finally, herself, holding a baby, eyes like space. She stopped. No, she whispered. Not me. But the mirrors spoke in harmony. It is always you. A rusted chapel stood ahead. It was different now, grown like a tumor from the forest floor. No doors, just walls pulsing with something beneath the wood, like veins beneath skin. The bell tower was cracked in half, but the bell still hung, waiting. She stepped forward. The vines parted. Inside, everything changed. There was no ceiling, only black sky and a bleeding moon. The floor stretched into impossible distance, lined with 7 altars. 6 held mirrors, still cracked and humming. The 7th was empty. A figure waited for her there. Not a man, not a god. It wore robes of shadow and bone. Its face was a mirror cracked into 7 pieces, each shard showing a different soul, each generation before her frozen in agony. It raised one hand. Child of dust and bell, it said in a voice like thunder wrapped in silk. You are the final gate. Celeste's hands trembled. What do you want from me? She asked. It stepped closer. From its chest it pulled something swaddled. The child. It was silent, watching, not quite human, not quite anything. You will raise it, the being said. And when the bell tolls for the 7th time, the veil will collapse. I won't, Celeste breathed. I won't carry this. But her stomach already stirred. She doubled over, a pain tearing through her gut like hot wire. She fell to her knees, gasping. The bell tolled once, boom, and her scream echoed into the sky. She awoke in a house she didn't recognize. Wooden walls, candlelight, the sound of soft crying in the next room. Her hands were soaked in blood. Her belly, flat. No, she whispered. She staggered into the next room. The child sat in a cradle of bone. It stared at her with those black, endless eyes. It smiled. Mother, it said. And the bell tolled again. Boom! The sky outside split in two. The ground shook. Shadows peeled themselves from corners and crawled across the floor. The mirrors in the walls shattered. And from each came the screams of the 6 before her. Morgan, Esla, Decker, Elijah, all of them. Their souls straining against the glass that held them. The church had fed on them, had grown with each toll. Celeste grabbed the child. It didn't resist. She ran through the hallway which no longer had an end. Doors spun like clock. Time bled down the walls in seconds. And centuries. She screamed and the child only laughed. Behind her the bell rang again. Boom! The 6th toll. Wind howled like sirens. Reality tore in patches. At the end of the corridor she saw a door, iron, blackened, covered in runes she understood without learning. The final lock. She reached it. But the child whispered, "Don't." Celeste turned, holding the child up to the sky. "Tell me what you are," she shouted. It blinked. "We are what comes next." And the bell tolled one last time. Boom! The 7th. The world held its breath. The ground cracked open. The air screamed. The chapel exploded into 1,000 spinning fragments of time. And from the sky above, something emerged. A cathedral of eyes, mouths, and silence. The church was never just a place. It was a prison. And now it was open. Celeste floated in the void, child in hand, surrounded by the echoes of generations before her. Then a voice, familiar, trembling, her own. "Tell me what happens now." And the child, now fully grown, turned to her, smiled, and said, "Now the story begins." The end. If you enjoyed The Forgotten Church Bell, it rings for those who are doomed. Drop a comment below and tell us, what would you do if the bell rang for you? Remember to like, subscribe, and share for more original horror tales that crawl beneath your skin and whisper while you sleep. Until next time, don't look in the mirror, don't listen for the bell, and whatever you do, don't answer when it rings.